Welcome to the Grand Compendium. Today I only have one horror story for you, but it's a really long one. This story is about a GM's awful games and all of the mistakes that they made in them. But before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone who's been continuing to watch these videos, and for letting us reach 100 subscribers. It's not a massive milestone, but it's still crazy to me that these videos have managed to reach an audience that would want to come back and watch more of what is essentially me just talking for half an hour. So thank you again, and I'm looking forward to hopefully see this channel grow even more in the future. But anyways, let's begin. Today's story is titled, GM Runs 3 Terrible Games, Makes Horrendous Rules Rulings, Engages in Blatant Favoritism, and Kills Exclusively My Characters. Hello Reddit. It's been a few years since I've played in these games, but the amount of BS I put up with over the course of this DM's 3 campaigns was substantial enough to where I wanted to just write it all down. Whether this is for catharsis or pretty musing, I still don't know, but maybe one of you will at least be entertained by it. The important people of this story are me, myself, the forever GM of the group, DM, my now former friend of a decade, and a player in my games for almost the entire time I knew him. The reasons we are no longer friends will not be stated in this story, as it was out-of-game stuff. GF, the GM's girlfriend, who will not be making an appearance until Campaign 3. Let me start off by saying that while I am the forever GM, I do not for a moment view it as a curse of an inferior way to play the game. I love controlling the world and providing my players with toys to play with. So when DM invited me to a new game he was running after I had GM'd for him, I happily took him up on the offer just to experience what it was like to be a player for the second time in 7 years. Campaign 1, Pit Fighter Peril. The first campaign that DM ran was the least egregious of the 3. It was a very simple premise. We were gladiators in a gladiatorial-style arena, fighting for fame, fortune, and glory. I rolled up with a dwarven war domain cleric, whose primary weapons were brass knuckles, and the rest of the party pretty much consisted of marshals and one sorcerer, since a lot of players were new to the game. From the start, we knew that roleplay was not going to be a large priority. The campaign was just an excuse to run fun combat encounters, so our characters never had backstories, beliefs, family, etc. In fact, I think I had the most complex character in the game, and all she wanted was to earn glory for herself. The campaign was fun, it was lighthearted and not too high stakes. But one thing that happened in the story would become a running theme in later games. That was DM's obsession with turning off abilities that should otherwise work, or giving weaknesses that should not be there. It happened after one pit battle where me and a sorcerer, the only spellcasters in the game, were fighting a bear, and through a critical guiding bolt, and then 2 rounds of beating the bear to death with my bare hands, my cleric single-handedly killed the bear, which should have been a deadly encounter, all while the sorcerer missed every attack due to unfortunate rolls. After this, the DM got weird with my cleric, and started saying things like, "A cleric should be focused on healing," or that I wasn't being a good team player by not healing. Something along those lines. Like, we got into a scuffle with a rival pit fighting party, and during it I cast Guiding Bolt and Spiritual Weapon. DM complained that I wasn't healing party members, despite the fact that one was downed, and we were easily winning. This culminated when we did a PvP bracket match as a party, to see who was the strongest fighter. It was low stakes, character death was not on the table for this bracket match. Due to having 7 people, we had to have one person get a free pass to skip a fight, and I won the dice roll. Lucky me, I guess. But this resulted in me having to fight the Warforged monk. We started 150 feet away. I go first, I try to cast 2nd level Guiding Bolt. The spell immediately failed, and I took radiant damage. DM said it was because I wasn't doing cleric things like healing and praying, which I don't get why I would need to heal in a 1v1 match, or why I'd need to pray in a roleplay-like campaign. As I was at an immediate disadvantage at the start of the fight, I ended my turn. The monk runs up to me and gets close, but not close enough to fight, so on my turn I engage in melee. Now, before the fight started, I bought an electric upgrade for my brass knuckles on a whim. It dealt an extra d4 electric damage, and because the DM loved to give weaknesses where there were none, the Warforged monk had electrical weakness. I managed to hit the monk with 2 melee strikes, beating him, but it felt wrong. I wanted to cast spells, and yet I learned I would be punished if I wasn't clerical enough. But before problems could come to a boiling point, the campaign ended because of COVID. So we would not play again for a few months until I started my next in-person campaign. End of Campaign 1. Now, before moving on to Campaign 2, DM had played a lot of characters in my games over the previous years, and most of them were murder goblins with a sympathetic backstory that justify him saying, "I'm just a little guy," whenever consequences reared their head. But none of those stories where he was a player were egregious enough to justify writing them out. But they were pretty bad in their own right. The reason I bring this up is because of the fact that he decided to bring in his old player characters into COH. DM let us know he wanted to run Curse of Strahd. It had been 2 years since DM ran the Gladiator game, and that game had been fun despite the red flags, so I happily joined. Now, it has been years, and I forget a lot of details of the story, but I remember the big details at least. Campaign 2, Bizarre Adventures in Barovia. Guest starring Strahd. I lost 3 characters in this campaign, and for 2 of them, I consider the deaths pretty BS. Not my first one, though. My first character was a first-level rogue with plans to multi-class bard. I wanted her to be the group's lawyer to keep them out of legal trouble. We were a party of private investigators, and we were hired by some halflings to exterminate a werewolf in a nearby forest, at the behest of an unnamed noble. After combing the woods for a day, that night, while resting, the halfling cast a spell that summoned a mysterious fog around all of us. And when it dissipated, we were in Barovia. Why did the halfling do that? To this day, no clue. He summoned us to hell for no reason. Now, I cannot blame DM for killing me. It was the death house after all. I activated 5 traps in the house. No one activated any other trap. And then got one shot by the shambling mound in the basement. I was splattered against the ceiling. He ran the death house straight. I was a little upset, but not really mad. Just disappointed I lost a character I liked. On the way out of the death house, our ranger died from the banshee wail, and immediately after that, the group found a scroll wrapped up for them. It was a spell scroll of Revivify, with a note saying, "Welcome to Barovia from Strahd." So the GM was fine with splattering my character against the ceiling after letting me hit 5 traps, and then killing me with a shambling mound. He took back the consequences for another player who died. The following session, I pull up with a new character, a human paladin who had a goal of becoming a lich, and who worshipped Vecna. After I was done rolling my new character, met the party in the village of Barovia, and we got along swimmingly. And we started questing. Now, do forgive me, as I said it had been a few years and the details are fuzzy in my head, but I can firmly describe the campaign as directionless. We never felt like we had a unified plan on what to do. We were kinda just showing up to sites across Barovia, killing different monsters. While doing this, my character started to receive divine punishment from trying to read pages from the Book of Vile Darkness he found. Not because Vecna decided that he didn't want a lich, but because my character wasn't evil enough to read the book for some reason, so I took intense damage trying to read it. During our directionless crusade, we had the event in the book where a self-driving carriage brings you to Strahd's castle. We go inside, and I can describe it as roughly 2 hours of my DM riffing on our characters in a bad Dracula accent. Blah blah blah. After a lovely dinner with our undead host, we were forced into the wilds of Baravia on foot back to the village, where we were robbed by werewolf bandits in a fight that was impossible to win, so we just gave them our stuff. The campaign had been pretty bad so far, but after the encounter we had what would spell the end of our campaign. Meeting Moldywort. Moldywort was DM's first PC, one that I played with my first time playing Dungeons & Dragons. He was a 35-year-old wizard who lived in his mom's basement and was kicked out onto the streets to begin a life of adventure. It was a character I had not seen since middle school, and honestly, I was a little excited to see him again. We met Moldywort on the road, and Moldywort was just in a tree. And in a ridiculous Monty Python accent, he basically yells at us to go to a local dungeon and get rid of all the ne'er-do-wells hiding inside. Why? No reason. Does it connect to Curse of Strahd at all? Nope. We go to the dungeon and it is barren. Just stone walls and no reason to really exist. We travel through winding stone walls for about an hour in game, and 2 hours IRL, and then encounter some hooligans. Now I don't remember what they were. I think they were orcs or bugbears or something of the like, and DM had them act like annoying stoned college kids. I still don't know what we were supposed to do with them. We had nothing to get from them, we weren't so evil as to need to kill them, and they weren't doing anything. So after 40 minutes of us not knowing what to do with the stoners, we just decided to leave. Whilst leaving the dungeon, we fell into a pit trap that led us into the Baravian Underdark. I think we may have tried to take a shorter exit, thus explaining why we didn't fall in on the way in. And while down there, we encountered a whole lot of nothing for about a full 5-hour session, until at the end, in the middle of nowhere of the Baravian Underdark, we encounter a Mind Flayer. There are no Mind Flayers in Baravia, and there is no official Underdark in Baravia either, which is fine, but we were level 5, and a Mind Flayer is level 7. Deadly for sure, but not impossible. The fight was hard fought. A lot of death saves were made, and party members healed with my lay on hands. But at the end, the Mind Flayer was down to single-digit health, and it was his turn. He casts Wall of Force, a spell Mind Flayers don't have, and he tries to run using the wall and a choke point to cover his escape. I was next, and I used my movement, a dash action, and a bonus action Misty Step, Oath of Vengeance spell, to get right next to him. He couldn't run from me and risk an attack of opportunity. A full round of combat goes on with many party members healing and trying to buff themselves for when the wall goes down. The Mind Flayer's turn comes up and he uses an Extract Brain on me, killing me instantly. And I was not even grappled, despite needing to be grappled for an Extract Brain to work. So, at the end of a boring quest with no stakes, in a place that does not exist in Baravia, fighting a monster that does not exist in Baravia, with a spell that that monster does not have, and an ability the DM ignored the requirements of, I lost my second character. I did not realize that the Mind Flayer needed to grapple me for an Extract Brain to work, so I put up no fuss at the time. But I wish I did, because maybe if I called out the horseshit this entire section was at the time, then maybe he would have backed off of a game mastering at the time. But instead we got Campaign 2.2, the Deather House. The Deather House is where I consider the campaign to have died. It was where the game had gone from being Curse of Strahd with a guest appearance from some of DM's old PCs, to being just an absurdist nightmare of the DM vaguely alluding to there being a Strahd somewhere in the world, while jumped all the sharks DM thought was funny at the time. I do not remember how he ended up in the Death House. It may have been a quest from Moldywort, it may have been a magic door we entered in while we were in the Underdark, We may have been magically knocked out and awoken in the Deather House. I wasn't paying attention. I was rolling my new character. The character I rolled was one of my favorite characters I've played, a Skaven Greyseer named Wretchetarius, but he would not come until later in the Deather House. The session started by the DM announcing, "You're now in the Deather House. Be careful," in a near sing-song voice. Our party realized how doomed they were. An incorrect assumption. Instead of finding ourselves in a foyer or living room of a murderous mansion, the characters awoke in a large room, all of us, except for me because I was still rolling, on pedestals with a podium in front of each of us. At the end of the dark room was another podium. A shadowy figure standing behind it. Studio lights come on. Behind the far podium is Strahd, and beside him is a magic mirror. In his Dracula accent, he said, "Welcome to Strahd Trivia!" And for the next 3 hours, there was a trivia game we had to partake in, with questions about Curse of Strahd. I finished rolling my character 20 minutes into the game, and I could not participate because I would not be in the scene. So I waited for the game to be done. For 2.5 hours. What did we get for winning this game? Nothing. What about losing? Nothing as well. There were no stakes whatsoever. So, after 3 hours of mind-numbing trivia, Strahd lets us go into the rest of the house. In the first corridor, the party hears skittering coming from the supply closet. They open the door and find Wretchetarius, removing copper pipe from the wall like a fiend. Introductions were made, and the party recruits me to get through the Deather House. They also gave me a dagger, since I had no supplies whatsoever. This will be important in a bit, but for now this session ended there. The next session, we make our way through the Deather House. What was in it? Corridors and walls. No traps, I think, and no loot. We just travel through over the course of an hour before coming onto a runic door. We open it and find a clone copy of our party, including a Wretchetarius clone, also holding a dagger. Here is how that interaction goes. In me and DM's happiest Skaven voices, we go,
"No, I am going to kill slay you. No, I will murder you. No, I'm the best, strongest Skaven. You are nothing but dirt shit beneath my heel. You are the grunge scum of the hell pit. I am the only chosen of the great horned rat fool. I am displeased to meet you. I will use your bone sinew for a mucculent broth soup. I will taxidermy your eyeballs for necklace decoration."
Ow. I hated that. This riffing went back and forth for about 4 minutes, and was some of the most fun RP I had all game. Then I cast Magic Missile at 2nd level. The other me cast Shield. On his turn, he cast Magic Missile, and I cast Shield. This goes back and forth for 4 rounds until we're out of slots. The daggers come out and we start stabbing each other. The DM just rolled the dice to see who would win. I still don't know which rat rocked out of that room, because the party we fought weren't evil. They were just us. We tried to talk it out while the 2 rats stabbed each other, but in the end, the parties fought. This fight ended with our party sorcerer dead. Same sorcerer player. He has a favorite class, and instead of rolling a new character, he took control of the clone sorcerer. Yep, this fight in the Deather House had no stakes whatsoever. This was 2 full sessions of nothing. After the fight was done, we looted the corpses, and we left the house, and find ourselves on the plains of Baravia, and we decided to rest in the wilderness. I asked the DM if I could swap my spells during the rest, since I was still a new character, and he said no, which is fine. But then he let me know that since I had no equipment, I could not regain spell slots. Since I had no spellbook, I asked the GM, what am I supposed to do then? He said, rely on cantrips until you have enough gold to buy new spells or find a new spellbook. I didn't raise a fuss, because for some reason, I trusted him to give me a spellbook in the near future. But he did not. Had I known I wouldn't get my spells back, I wouldn't have used them in the mirror match, but whatever, I guess. The next day we were traveling a road we found in hopes to find some sort of town, when we were robbed again by the same werewolves from before. But instead of leaving, the DM used them as a social lever to hold us hostage while he roleplayed with these bandits in a bad Russian accent, saying how cool and powerful they were, all while they walked us back to a town. This took almost 2 hours. 2 hours of listening to annoying, braggadocious wolves talk about themselves. In that town, we took some quest or another for some gold. It was generic, like slay the monster or save the kid or something of the like. The quest took us to a room in the sewers with what I will call a rat king, a hive mind of 1,000 rats. The DM informed us that it was CR 14. We were level 6. This would be an unwinnable fight. The Rat King threatened, belittled, and strong-armed us into doing a quest for it. What was this quest? Find him a lot of cheese from giants a few weeks away. So we leave the sewer, unable to claim a quest reward since we could not kill the Rat King, and we set off for the Elven village. After travel with no interruptions, we get to the giant village, and we try to buy thousands of pounds of cheese for them, but we had no money, and they wanted no work done for them in exchange for the cheese. So, at an impasse, we trade them some of the only quest loot we got in Curse of Strahd. I forget what it was, but it was a blow to morale, losing some of our only money. Now, with thousands of pounds of cheese and no cart, we have to locate transport. And it so happened in the distance that we saw 4 Romani-style wagon caravan approaching from the fog in the distance, being headed by Campaign 2.3, Captain Flameheart. Captain Flameheart was another one of DM's PCs, an inoffensive one for his standard, but as a DM PC, Flameheart was a waking nightmare and a half. Captain Flameheart was a skeleton pirate captain from a campaign of mine that had recently ended, with Flameheart dying due to magic in the world being erased entirely. DM brought Flameheart in as the head of the caravan, and he introduced himself and was probably the first friendly NPC we had. He let us load the cheese onto his cart and then let us travel with him in his caravan. So far, so good. Next session, we start by traveling to the town with the Rat King, and Flameheart started to talk. And then Flameheart talked some more. And then he talked more, and on, and on, and on. For a full 5-hour fucking session, he talked in a shifty, surly pirate's accent, while I let my complaints be known at the table that I would prefer if we weren't doing a whole session of nothing on my day off. DM told me to tell Flameheart in character to be quiet, and I did, and all Flameheart did was chastise me to my face, and then keep talking. By the 3-hour mark, I started to hate Flameheart, and by the end of the session, I just wanted to deliver cheese and leave. The next session rolls around, and we get kidnapped by some lady. I think it was Baba Lysaga. During the skirmish that got us kidnapped, I remember being hit on a modified 12. Wizard, mind you, and I remember asking DM if I could scrounge armor off the guy who hit me after I killed him. DM said I could, but I couldn't wear it. I asked him why I couldn't. He said it was because as a wizard, I should take AC, increasing my spells instead. This was 4 sessions since my rat and I still had no spell slots. We lose the fight and are captured by Baba, and are forced to work as her slaves for a few hours in game. This was considerably more fun than talking to Flameheart. And the session ends with Flameheart single-handedly starting a slave revolution, and we were given the choice, join him or Baba. The GM let us know out of game that we could join either side and be fine. Now remember, I, in and out of character, hate Flameheart. He is just an excuse for the DM to talk and talk. So next session I joined Baba for the fight along with a few loyal lieutenants. However, the battle was pitched in Flameheart's favor, and given how much of a higher level he was, it would be impossible for us to beat him. So the rest of the party joined that calcium-coated chode. The combat started, and I was early in initiative, so I ran forward and hit Flameheart with a firebolt cantrip. Flameheart, ignoring Baba, who was closer to him than I was, proceeded to run forward and used a magic item to teleport me and him to a pocket dimension. An item I guess he had and was able to keep while being in captivity. While in the pocket dimension, Flameheart proceeds to kill Vegetarius in 2 shots. I was a level 6 wizard with no spells, no items, and only 1 combat cantrip. So I freak out and start bitching and moaning as to how unfair and bullshit the combat was. I was genuinely hurt because I felt like I was being targeted for no reason, and DM was not standing up to the criticism. Just ends the session and the campaign on that anticlimactic note. In the meantime, the Sorcerer player ran a fun World of Darkness game, and DM would not run another game for another year or so. Author's note. I will say that everyone in our group has run at least one ttrpg game, and most of us have had GM fails. He'll have my own campaign that could be its own RPG horror story, but that was only once. The difference between us and DM is that every game was pretty atrocious. Campaign 3, High Seas Hysterics. Let me start off by saying that in this story, you may be able to see my actions I initially took to be that of a chaotic, stupid problem player. And you would be right. I'm not justifying it, simply acknowledging it. Also, in terms of his 3 campaigns, this is probably the second worst he ran in terms of how much fun we had. Leagues behind Curse of Strahd, but in terms of how much DM did wrong, it was probably the worst in such a short period of time. Curse of Strahd started strong and ended terribly. This was terrible from the start and lasted 5 sessions. Between campaign 2 and 3, DM managed to get himself a girlfriend, who in retrospect was an awful person for him and his mental health. But this was not the way we felt at the time the story took place. I was fond of GF and thought she was cool, and I was happy for DM to find someone. I will also need to say that since my group has been playing games for a decade at this point, that we really don't do session zeros to discuss the fine details of the campaign. We know what we're comfortable with, so whoever is GMing will say something along the lines of, "You're going to play a 3rd level merchant in an Eberron campaign. You'll be playing good characters." And that'll be that. Now, do you remember how I mentioned that Flameheart was a previous pirate character for him? Well, that was off a long-running adventure I advertised as a pirate game, but the party was too goody two-shoes to be pirates, so it wound up becoming an airship voyage to stop a big bad from destroying the world, and not the pirate game I set out for. Well, DM was disappointed the campaign didn't wind up being piratey enough, so he set out to make his own. The 3rd campaign started off with the DM saying that he wanted to run a proper pirate game. He said he wanted it to be an open-world sandbox style game, and he wanted to invite his girlfriend. It had been about a year since the previous campaign, and he had some changes in his life, so I decided to participate. I used a homebrew clown class in an attempt to make an uninspired Chuckles the Clown knockoff. Now let me tell you, as a GM I allowed homebrew, but my players never used it. So I did not realize how bad D&D Wiki homebrew was. The homebrew gave me unlimited rope tricks at level 1. It is a 2nd level spell, I thought it was only 1st level. In all fairness, Fly is a 3rd level spell and some races get it for free. Not justification, just amusing really. Session 1 had us players play as level 1 adventurers, joining a merchant vessel named the Brave Sea, in order to sail off to a distant port city for various reasons. I think mine was that I was looking for work somewhere new. Before we can make character introductions to each other, our ship had set sail. And only a few hours travel outside the port, the ship suffered a mutiny. It turned out that GF was a double agent for a pirate cabal, and she brought some cronies with her in order to stage her mutiny. Without there being a combat encounter, the merchant crew was taken hostage, as we were all of the other party members, and then the captain of the Brave Sea was executed in front of us with a pistol shot to the side of the head. An NPC of the pirate cabal, someone who was probably level 7, then announced that we were being press-ganged into this pirate cabal, and that GF would be our leader. If we didn't want to join and accept GF as our captain, we could join the old captain in Davy Jones's bag of holding. So with our backs to the wall, we were forced to join the pirate crew. We were not informed of any of this plan to make GF the most important player and leader of the group, so it was jarring in character. Had we been told about this beforehand in person, we would have probably gone along with it, but since it was so jarring to us, we could see this for what it was. Blatant DM favoritism. Oh, remember how I said I was chaotic stupid with this character? Well, I have at least some level of integrity that probably came from a desire to be funny, and no intention to survive what I viewed as revenge for my dear captain. During the hostile takeover of the ship, I managed to sneak into the cargo hold of the ship where the powder room was. I then proceeded to open a barrel of powder and create a trail of gunpowder to have a delayed burst of the room. I lit the trail and then hid inside of a rope trick portal, and I managed to survive the explosion with minimal damage. The Brave Sea split in twain, submerging its content, and some of its crew, to a briny fate. However, all of the party and the pirate crew escaped unharmed. By all rights, this merry lot of miscreants should have been stranded. Perhaps a friendly sea elf community could have come to our aid. Perhaps another merchant vessel could have seen the explosion and rescued a band of cutthroats and prisoners. Perhaps a deep sea entity could have offered us a deal in order to escape our sorry state. No, actually, the Braver Sea, sister ship of the Brave Sea, was sailing a day's worth of travel behind us, so it picked us up and the GM and GF did another hostile takeover, and the rest of us could not stop it. End of session 1. Between sessions, DM straight up said he was going to kill my character, which was fine I suppose, but I view it as a shame that he didn't at least try to work out something with me. So the entire next session was us exploring a lighthouse, and in the basement of the lighthouse we found an alien flying saucer. We accidentally activated it, and it cast Disintegrate on my first level clown. There goes my clown. With the death of my last character by DM's hand, I will now say that he never killed anyone else's characters, just mine. While Sorcerer did die in the Deather House, he was able to continue as an exact clone of himself, so I wouldn't say that counts. But whatever, DM just had it out for me. I rolled up my next character, one of my favorites, though it's a shame he was stuck in this campaign. Grop Grip, GG for short, a Pact of the Blade Grung Warlock. Since it was a pirate campaign, I made him evil, but he was evil in a shady CEO sort of way, rather than the more murder hobo way. GG was able to enter the scene by being found in the hold of the Braver Sea, being a stowaway in a barrel of drinking water. Grung have a water breathing after all. Introductions were made and GG joined the party, and the session 2. By this point we had started to voice our concerns as to GF leading us, mainly because she did not treat her fellow party members as equals. Rather, they were obstacles to overcome. So at the beginning of this third session, DM gave us a choice. He informed us that we could vote for a new captain if we did not want GF to be our captain. However, the catch, as that there were 5 players, me and GF make up 2 of them, leading to there being 3 others. There were also 4 NPCs who were allowed to vote, and guess who they voted for? The only way for us to beat GF in votes is if every player in the game, mind you our characters are strangers, vote for someone else to lead us, and we get an NPC to vote with us. So it was practically impossible from the start. With our wishes being thoroughly ignored, the campaign continued with us sailing the open seas, and it was about this point that we realized how little effort was put into the campaign. The world map that the DM presented us was very clearly made from a random map generator, and I had a sneaking suspicion that he hadn't really given it a close look himself, and that most of his world building was being done on the fly. There was only one nation on the map the DM knew about, and did any world building for. It was apparently a pirate necrocracy called Flameheart's Rejects. Upon hearing word of this necrocracy, everyone in the party told the DM that we wanted nothing to do with it. And for once he respected our wishes because there was not a single skeleton pirate in the campaign. The first thing we did as a party was explore a sunken shipwreck. In the horizon we noticed a bunch of smoke rising, so we investigated it. When we got to the location, we could only see some flaming floating debris, and evidence a ship had sunk underwater. The group decided that GF and I should investigate. Since she was a druid and I was a grung, I could breathe underwater. GF hits the water first, turning into some sort of creature, and she sees the wreck 150 feet down. I jump into the water and am informed that I cannot breathe in salt water for some reason. DM cited that frogs can't breathe salt water, so neither can grung. And not only that, I would also take 1 damage a turn from being in salt water, since a frog would too, I guess. I built GG for a high seas pirate game, and now I was being punished for using what is already a pretty mediocre race option. Had I chosen a human, I could at least hold my breath for a long time. But as a grung warlock, I would die in salt water for 5 minutes. This caused an hour-long argument as me and a few other people at the table argued against the DM on his fiat, and he would not budge, so eventually I relented. You may wonder why I let DM get away with so much horse shit while he ran games. And it's simple. We were friends at the time, and I had an amount of trust in him as a person still. Also, this is a social game, so there is an expected social contract to keep things moving and to not dwell on little issues. Plus, these games take place years apart, so when an incident happens, the first thing I think of is not, "This is just like the time he gave me no equipment in Strahd." Anyway, now with GF being the only person allowed to do anything with the shipwreck, we basically waited an hour for her to explore it, then she got attacked underwater by some larger sea monster. We had to swim down as a party to rescue her. We get her back onto the braver sea and head for land with some treasure we managed to pillage from the wreck. We arrived in a port city, and from there our party went drinking in a local tavern, and half the party got smashed. Half the party stayed on the ship for the night, and the rest of the party in the tavern. GF, me, and our trickster domain Harengon cleric went to the braver sea. Me and the cleric were sober, as with GF getting hammered, so our trickster domain cleric decided to prank GF. I don't remember what it was. It may have been drawing a fake mustache and glasses on her face while in that stupor. I then did something that I shouldn't have done. I stole money from her while she was sleeping. Like 30 gold or something. While PvP wasn't encouraged in this game, it also wasn't dissuaded, as GF at multiple points in the game threatened to have us killed if we didn't do as she said. But through an NPC who we were certain was staying in the tavern, magically showing up, the theft and prank were both stopped, and GF forced me to give her money back or she would kill my character. After this, the party heard word of an abandoned dwarven outpost out in the middle of the ocean, and we decided to check it out. 3 in-game days later, we arrive at a stone and steel lighthouse jutting out of the water, with an entrance large enough to fit a ship. We head inside, disembark the ship, and find that awaiting us was a puzzle that we just could not beat. To this day, I still have no idea what the solution to the puzzle was. It involved a poem that gave us clues on how to interact with objects in a room we were in. But we seriously tried for an entire 5-hour session before the GM just had to wave his hand and let us through. I think the puzzle was impossible with how he described the room and objects inside it. There seemed to be no way that we interacted with the room that worked. Once inside the Dwarven Outpost proper, we were immediately hit with a CRA golem. We were level 4 or so, and we barely managed to survive the attack, and everyone but GF wanted to leave and head for the ship. GF refused, so we refused her refusal, and left anyway despite her threats and pleads to move forward. I understand why she wasn't afraid. There is no way the DM would have killed her. We would not be as lucky. We went back to the same port town, and my character sells the loot we have as he is built for this sort of thing. We got a good price for the items we got, and my character tried to skim some money off the top, but was once again called out by GF for no reason. Once again threatened, I gave the money back. Then when GF went to distribute the money, she tried to give herself a larger cut. This resulted in a large argument in game that the session ended with. Between sessions, GF let us know that she didn't want to continue as she thought that we had it out for her. And with that, DM stopped running his game and he went back to being just a problem player instead. Our friendship ended a few months back after a series of escalating events that culminated in us not speaking to each other. Luckily, I am still friends with everyone else except for GF, and now with me running a Pathfinder 2nd Edition game Mondays, and our Harengon cleric running his own homebrew system, and we are having a blast with both. I wish I could say that there was a lesson to be learned here, but I think the main takeaway is that you should really learn to recognize bad patterns early. Had I remembered how Recitarius was treated in Curse of Strahd, I would have not joined his pirate game. Thank you for reading and have a blessed day. End of story. It's understandable why OP put up with this. Like they said, when you think someone is a close friend, you usually don't want to think too harshly of them. Unfortunately though, this can lead to situations like this. In the first campaign, he gave his player a weakness to electricity for being a warforged, which could make sense, but counter-argument, shouldn't all humanoids be weak to fire? Last I checked, people are pretty flammable. Yeah, that logic just doesn't make any sense, and is just a way to ruin your player's fun. Same goes for telling your cleric that they're playing wrong, and then punishing them for it. The second campaign is a mess. OP's characters being the only ones to die is arguably a coincidence, but with all of the rules being ignored in the paladin's death, and the targeting of the wizard, it does make it seem like it was a deliberate choice. The third campaign may be the best example of GM favoritism, though these issues could have been solved with a proper Session 0, or at least I'd like to think so. It's good that this group is going strong after dealing with their awful DM though. That's all I have to say, so if you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe, so that you're notified when the next horror story video is released. That's it, and I hope that you all have a good day.